Hi, my name is Patrick Murphy-Racey, and I'm a sports photographer. I also happen to be a Sony Artisan of Imagery, so I'm sponsored by Sony in part of what I do. I want to make a very good point, though, that Sony did not pay me to make this video. I'm not going to get paid for this video content. This content is my own. You can do whatever you want with that information. You can just stop watching right now if you'd like. That's cool, but I'm hoping it's valuable. I'm talking today about the Sony a9II, but I'm not talking about it from looking at specifications on a computer screen or reading about what others have said about it. I've been shooting this camera virtually every day for the last 10 days. I've shot a total of 4 football games. I've shot 2 different lit portrait situations. I shot soccer and I shot ice hockey. So in doing all these different games, I have traveled over 2,000 miles. I've photographed things in 4 different states, all in the last 10 days, and all of it with the a9II. So I hope that if you're tuning in and you're a sports photographer, this is for you. If you're a photojournalist, this is for you. If you shoot wedding and event photography and you already use the a9, this is for you. So I'm hoping that this is helpful. What I've done is I've come up with 18 different things why I think that buying an a9II is valid for me. Now, these are my opinions about my work and how I'm going to use the camera. But you may have different ones, and that's fine, and that's all good. It's a free country. Don't buy one if you don't want to. But here are my 18 reasons why you should. And at the end, I'm going to give you 6 pain points of the a9II. Things that I think the camera should have had and doesn't. And then I'm hoping that Sony will eventually respond and put all those in. For now, number 1, improved autofocus performance. Even though the camera uses the same sensor, people are making a big deal out of that, the autofocus system is better. It's more mature, it's more chilled out, it's very settled down, it's extremely confident and robust. Now, those are a bunch of adjectives. What does it really mean in the viewfinder? When I'm shooting sports with the a9 and I'm using tracking, I use tracking flexible spot medium for almost everything I do. When I do that in the a9, I see little dancing squares, I see IAF, I see face detect come on, I see also the square with the line on either side of it, which shows tracking. When you see the tracking symbol, it means that the a9 is actually able to hold all the balls in the air as it juggles all these different things. Remember, you have distance, contrast, face detection, eye autofocus, color, and pattern. Those are all the things that the a9 is doing when it's doing real-time tracking. So when I'm shooting sports with the a9, the original a9, it's flitting back and forth all the time. One of the things you notice immediately when you start using an a9II is that things settle down and you almost always just see the camera able to keep all the balls in the air without breaking a sweat. It's very consistent, it's very solid. It feels like a different camera because it is a different camera. So the autofocus performance in terms of acquisition, it's a violent acquisition, it's even faster than the original a9. But most importantly is not just acquiring, but keeping the subject in focus. Even with radical, erratic movement and all that kind of stuff, it's doing a lot better. And it was doing great before. So they've just added more like icing to the cake with a big cherry on top and whipped cream. So I'm very, very happy with that. The number 2 thing is improved image quality and color. I shot indoor hockey in an old arena that was built in the 50s. I shot high school football at 20,000 ISO. I shot under LED lights down at Western Florida University, the Blue Wahoos. I've never shot LED football lights before. That was a first for me. It was amazingly good quality. I've shot lit portraits with strobes, not made by Sony, so seeing how that interface worked. In all these situations, I find that the image quality overall is better. And I know it's the same sensor, but I'm telling you that the processing of the images is different. And if you think about it, the A9 was announced 2.5 years ago exactly, but the camera was pretty much finished and completed 3 years ago. So just imagine the engineers have had 3 years to figure out how to get another ounce out of that same sensor. And I think they did. I especially see this quality difference in two ways. The first way is in extremely high ISOs. The color is super stable, especially skin tones under lighting conditions. I never once changed off of auto white balance. Every single assignment I did, I left auto on. Even when I did the lit portraits, because they were outdoors, so it didn't matter. It was already seeing the sun anyway. But I'm really, really impressed with the quality of especially the low light photographs. Skin tones, human face skin tones are amazingly accurate and good. There's very little to do with these files, no matter how screwed up your lighting is. And that's a great benefit to people who shoot weddings and photojournalism and, of course, sports photography, my wheelhouse. So I made a comment that on my blog that I believe that the A9II has 2 stops better quality than the A9, and people just went crazy. And what I'm talking about is like right now the outdoor temperature here in Knoxville is maybe 75 degrees. But then there's this thing called the heat index, which tells us how hot it really feels, right? So if it's 90 outside, it might be 101 in the heat index. It's kind of like this. With the image quality and color improvements of the A9II, it is still the same sensor. It's still the same ISO, but I'm telling you, the way the images are processed, they're just cleaner. That's the best word I can use. It's clean. The files coming out of the A9II are much cleaner, and they're kind of ready to be sent in a way that, you know, even the A9 couldn't compare to. So, number 2, improve image and color quality. Number 3, anti-flicker, thanks be to God. When the A9 came out originally, I was one of the very first 2 American photographers, myself and Gene Lower from the Cardinals. We were the ones that got to shoot it first. And I was shocked that they made such an awesome sports camera, 20 frames per second, with this radical autofocus improvement without anti-flicker. It was a real bummer. So the A9II has anti-flicker, as does the A7R4, as does the A7 III, as does the A7R III. So it's now the 4th camera in the lineup that has anti-flicker, but the A9 should have had it in the first go-around, in my opinion. There's something about the sensor. I don't know why they didn't do it, but I'm glad they did. They figured out how to do it. It must have been a hardware issue because they would have done it in a firmware thing upgrade. But a couple things about anti-flicker on the A9II. Number 1, you must go into the menus and turn it on. It's a feature that's in the menus that is off when it comes out of the box. So the default setting is off. You have to actually turn it on. That's step 1. Step 2 is you have to hit the C3 button and change from electronic or silent shutter to mechanical. Anti-flicker will only work in mechanical shutter. It will not work in electronic shutter. So I don't know why, but it just doesn't. So, and remember, anti-flicker is dealing with lighting that is flickering. It's pulsing, actually. So the light is coming on and off, on and off, on and off. And what happens is the motor drive is shooting really quickly as that light is moving. And when you catch anything other than the peak of that light pulsing, you get weird colors and you get underexposure as well. So I'm sure you've seen this if you shot high school football or in a bad, old kind of a old school basketball gym. It's just tough, and you get yellow one and a blue one and a red one and an orange one, and then all of a sudden a white one, and then it goes off to something else again. So anti-flicker kind of retards and advances the shutter firing so that it only fires at the peak of the pulse. It's a wonderful experience, and one of the places I shot, there was an ESPN game last Thursday night over at NC State. Syracuse came into town, and there was a game there. And NC State, way back when, some architect who, all photographers universally hate this person, spec'd out the light source for that stadium. And they put up all those light standards, this big modern stadium, and all the lights flicker so bad, it'll make you crazy. I'm glad I don't have to shoot there every week, because it would be a nightmare. And so it was a really great place to take the A9II to, because I was able to turn anti-flicker on and off throughout the game, so I could show you the images and see the difference. And so you'll see all this red banding. It's kind of a red band that's either on the top or the bottom of the frame. Sometimes it's in the middle. It just depends on when you start shooting. But the anti-flicker option in the A9II is fabulous. It's going to be a great thing for people that shoot in poorly lit stadiums. So we're really happy to have that. Sorry to spend so much time on that, but it's a big deal. Number 4 technically isn't an improvement over the A9, because the A9 did I can't remember if it was 5.0 or 6.0. I think it's 6. The firmware upgrade got the glowing red autofocus frame, the focus indicator and the viewfinder. But I'm so happy to have that thing. I just had to put it on the list. So, but anyway, it has it natively, and it wasn't something that was added later, whatever. But I don't want to take it out. So, number 5, Voice-Memo. Man, I am so happy that Sony finally did it all in camera. There's no app required. You can now shoot a series of images. You can edit in the camera, figure out the best one, protect that file. Then you can hit, I tasked it to the C1 button in the top right of the camera. So all you do is you get an image that you want to keep, that you want to caption on the back of in playback. You just have it on the back screen, and then you press the C1 button down once you program it, and you can literally talk in the microphone on the top of the camera, and you can record the caption information. When you stop and let go, it's a toggling switch. So when you hit it again, it plays it back. The reason why I bring this up is if you're shooting PGA or LPGA golf, you want to check and see how high your volume is set on your playback, because it could be really bad if you're, on some green and you're captioning an image and there's still somebody putting, and then all of a sudden you play it back and your camera starts talking. It would be really bad. So golf shooters, beware. If you shoot a lot of jazz and concerts and small venue music things with strings, be careful with that, because it's going to get you. But anyway, Voice-Memo is huge. It's great to have it. Covering swim meets is always challenging, because there's heat after heat after heat. And lane 4 won that last heat, and their name is up there, and you can press the button, say, Jim Smith, freestyle, blah, 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 heat 5. And then you let go, and that is now embedded with the image that you recorded it on, which is awesome. One other thing that a lot of people missed in the press that covered the A9 announcement is that in certain situations, when you're actually FTPing actively into a server, it will actually it'll do voice to text and put the written information that you spoke into the file, which is killer. And once again, it's another example of Sony saying, okay, well, we're going to finally give you Voice-Memo, but here, you didn't ask for this, but here it is. It's kind of cool. So, Voice-Memo, awesome. Thank you very much. Number 6, dust and moisture sealing. Before I say anything about this feature, because they've added it, it's better. The Generation 4 bodies are much better than the Gen 3 ones. So the A7R4 and the A9 are the first 2 bodies that we've seen in this Gen 4 kind of design. The battery door, every part of the camera that has an opening is rubber sealed now. It's great. Much improved over the original A9, much improved over the A6000, which is what I started with way back when. But I want to say this. I've been shooting Sony for sports since 2013. I've never had a camera go down because of water from rain. I just haven't had one break. And the reason is I'm a professional, and professionals cover our gear. We have rain covers. So I just don't think it makes sense to go out and want to go out in the rain with a camera that's exposed to elements when you don't have to. Now, if you work for a wire service or a newspaper and they pay for your gear and it's issued to you, you do what you want, and you could deal with your boss when it breaks and you have to send in to get it fixed. But I actually buy and pay for my own stuff. So I use rain covers. So I haven't had any issues with weather sealing on any Sony camera since 2013. But at the same time, I'm really glad that Sony's doing this, because sometimes photographers are out on a sailboat. You might be in a dusty hay barn trying to change lenses or something like that, and it's really great to have that sealing to make sure all that crud stays out of your camera. So that was number 6. Number 7, 10 frame per second mechanical shutter. Fantastic. I loved everything about the A9 except when you had to go into mechanical shutter. It went from 20 frames a second to 5. It went from shooting instantly, even seemed like before you pressed the button it was firing, to like way after you press the button. There's a lot of lag in the mechanical shutter of the early A9. It was lethargic, it was slow, it was not good for sports. It was so bad that during basketball season, I would use my A9s as remote cameras instead of using them in my hands, because I was willing to give up the better autofocus accuracy and speed to get a camera that would fire when I wanted it to during a basketball game. So I don't have to do that anymore. It's awesome. I'll be able to use the A9 for the first time shooting hoops on strobes, which I'm stoked about. It's great. The other thing about the 10 frame per second mechanical shutter, which is the same exact one that's in the A7R4, by the way, they dampened it. So they took a quiet shutter and they made it even quieter. So now we have a 10 frame per second camera that is making maybe half the noise of, it's probably less, it's probably like a third of the noise of an 1DX Mark II at 14 frames a second. It's really cool that we have this feature. It's also nice because you don't always want people to know when you're shooting a picture when you're on mechanical. If you got like heavy banding from weird lighting or whatever, I just love working quietly. And even if you're on mechanical shutter now, you can still work quietly and not have, you can be very unobtrusive. So this is a big benefit. One other thing I'm going to mention about the mechanical shutter that I'm happy about, but there's a pain point to it too. This is the first camera that Sony's ever made that I have ever tested that gives a totally pure, clean 1/200th of a second sync with a Pocket Wizard. So all the other cameras, 1/160th was really the only clean speed. And when you go to 200th, you know, there was a little bit of ghosting, a little darkness on the top of the frame where the shutter wasn't completely out of the way when the strobe went off. So at least they're working on this. I still want 250 sync, but at least you gave me a true 200, which I appreciate. Thank you very much. But as someone who uses arena strobes for, you know, basketball and hockey, I really want a 250 sync, but that's for another part. So anyway, number 8, big buttons and better grip. Wow. The AF on button is just about as big as it is on a D5. I love it now. I love it. And I can find it with gloves on, which is going to be very appreciative from people shooting the Winter Olympics. The joystick is now kind of a flat, more flush-mounted button. It still has all the movement that it had before, but it won't catch in your clothing and break off like some of them did on the A9. So again, Sony's listening. They're really taking notes. They're changing things that we're asking for. I'm very happy about this. The bigger buttons are awesome. And the grip of the camera, when you put the grip on an A9II, holy moly, it feels just as good as any D5 or 1DX Mark II. I would not change a thing. If Sony made 3 different more A9s going on in the future in the next 5 years, and they didn't change anything about the grip and the way the camera holds in my hand, I'd be satisfied. So I'm very, very happy with that. So the tactile feel of the buttons, the bigger buttons, just the whole thing, the locking exposure compensation dial, these are all things that just needed to get done. They feel like $1 million in your hands, so I'm stoked about it. Number 9, faster Wi-Fi. The original A9 only had 2.4 gig in terms of speed for Wi-Fi. The A9 goes all the way to 5, and you really see this when you fire up Imaging Edge and move a picture from the camera to the phone. It is so quick, it's just mind-boggling. You don't even get to see the progress bar move. It's just like the picture comes up, it's there in an instant, and it says, okay, and it's done. So it's really, really quick. When you're on deadline, this is a huge thing. When the people you're working for are being driven by social media, it's going to be so awesome. You know, I used to be able to tell people I can go from a play on the field to Instagram in under 60 seconds. Now, It's more like 40 seconds or 30 seconds, and that's with toning and Snapseed before I go to Instagram. So it's very impressive. Number 10, count them, 2 UHS 2 fast card slots. There's not a slug in the camera anymore like there used to be. In the original A9, the bottom slot was fast, UHS 2. The upper slot was slow, UHS 1. And it had that stupid memory stick compatibility, which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. But Sony's trying to be true to their roots or whatever, but screw that. I'm just glad to have the 2 fast slots. Point though, the upper slot is now slot 1 and the lower slot is now 2. So it's opposite of the original A9, whatever. But it's great. Enough said. About time. Thank you very much. Number 11, USB fast charging. People who drag D5s and D4s and 1DXs around the world or around the country and shoot sports, you always have to pack your battery charger. Or haul a bunch of extra batteries with you to make sure you don't run out of battery. And one of the things that I think people miss, like there's always been the ability to charge the battery in an A9 in the past through the USB 2.0 slot. But now that we can use the USB-C, you can charge the battery much faster. So the throughput of the charge, there's more voltage moving through that cable. And it is now possible, and I did this last week, I was in Florida and I was driving from like Seaside over to Pensacola, and one of the 2 batteries in my grip in the A9II was low. And I just unplugged my phone and plugged that thing in and drove for an hour and a half, and by the time I got there it was at 89% from like 14%. It was great. So a lot of times we kind of don't think about this. We're dragging extra batteries along on trips when all we really needed to do is take a USB charging cord and then, you know, have a 2 outlet thing that plugs in the wall in the hotel, and off you go. So this is a big deal, and this is something that cannot be done with the Canon and Nikon stuff that I'm aware of anyway. So number 11, USB-C fast charging. Awesome. 12 and 13 and 14 all have to do with video. And even though I'm a sports guy and primarily a still shooter, I do video. So I wanted to include 3 different options in here that are new to the A9II. Number 1, real-time IAF in video. Now we've always had face detect autofocus for video with Sony. That's always been a case. It's great. But real-time tracking with IAF for video is really revolutionary. It's incredible. In fact, it's on right now. So you're watching this video. This video is being shot with an A7R4 with a 50mm 1.4 lens that's wide open at 1.4. And as you can see, I can kind of move around a little bit, and it's still going to be okay. At least I hope. I can't see it, so I have confidence it was working. But anyway, real-time autofocus for movies is a big deal. And a lot of us work one-man band show, you know, just going out and doing it. This helps keep costs down. It helps my billing go up because I don't have to have somebody running sound or whatever. I don't have to have somebody pulling focus. It's a big deal. So number 12, real-time autofocus for movies. Number 13 is the ability to custom name video files. Oh my gosh. I can't tell you how frustrating it is to do a 4-camera shoot and have all your Sony cameras generating the same file numbers. It's just maddening. And so now you can, like my A7R4 is A7R4. That's the name of the video file. 001.mp4 or mh4, whatever it is. So I'm so thankful that we can now do that on our own, because now we can differentiate our shot list and work in post much more efficiently and without wasting time, because we can now rename our own video files. Number 14 is digital audio. When the A7R4 was launched, they launched 2 new microphones. The first is a shotgun that employs some of the newer noise canceling headphone technology. There's like 8 little modules that all, I'm not even gonna go into it. It's like George Jetson stuff, but there's this really wicked little shotgun mic that's itty bitty tiny thing and has true digital to digital transfer to the camera instead of a transducer to digital. And then they also have the brand new XLR K3M, which is the kind of mixer with a shotgun mic built into it. But both of these new microphones have true digital capability, but only on the A7R4 and the A9II. So number 15, going back into stills, exposure dial toggle lock. This is the exposure compensation dial that's at the far right, kind of at the top of the camera in the corner there. And if you shoot an automatic, or if you shoot in like maybe you shoot in manual but you use auto ISO, this has bit you. I know it has, because what happens is you'll carry in the camera, you're pulling it out of a case, that little wheel rolls, and now you're 3 stops underexposed or 3 stops overexposed, and you're like, what's wrong, what's going on? And then you figure out it's your stupid compensation dial. So they put a toggle locking button on there, which is great. And what this means is that you press it once and it unlocks and it can move freely. When you press it again, it locks it and it can't move at all. It's really, really a good design. But for those of you that shoot in aperture priority, which a lot of sports photographers shoot in aperture priority, you're going to be able to do that safely now, where the camera's not going to change your exposure by 3 stops in one direction or the other without you realizing it, and it just slays me that did that. But so now all the dials up there locked down. It's great. Number 16, new function button options. This is so cool because I do shoot video as well as stills, and when I shoot video and I'm coming off of a still shoot, I have what I call kitchen table time, and I've got to sit down at the kitchen table and I've got to go through the entire camera and I've got to reset all these different things, find all these menus. This is really going to help, because now when you hit the function button on the back of the camera, you get upper 12 that are for still photography, the lower 12 are for video. So there's now 24 different options that you can control depending where you have the mode dial set. So if the mode dial is set an M or A or P or whatever, which is not for professional, you have the 12 for stills, but as soon as you go to movie, it's going to give you the bottom ones, which is all for video. So it's really great, wonderful. Number 17, we're almost finished. Thanks for hanging in there. Number 17, battery efficiency has been approved. Now, I have no complaint whatsoever about the A9's battery. The battery life of these Z batteries is incredible. Most games I go to, there's only one battery in that grip. I have the grip on there to feel better and to be able to shoot vertically with a vertical release. But if they have changed that, that's great. I haven't really noticed anything, but I wasn't really trying it or testing it either. But if Sony's going to give us added efficiency in the Z battery in an A9II, I'll take it. It's great. Number 18. This one takes a little bit of thinking, a little bit of history, and a little bit of faith. Number 18, I think, is maybe the most important thing about the A9II that makes it better than the A9 and worth purchasing, and that is that it's just not finished yet. The A9, the way we have it right now, it is clear to me that this camera was brought out early to be able to fulfill all the needs of the wire service photographers that will be covered in the Olympics. That's why we have the A9II now. I don't think that every option of the A9II is in the camera yet. I think that there will be other future firmware updates that are going to bring us more features, hopefully some of the things that I want that I don't have right now. But to look at the A9 as an event that happened and is now in the past, which is how I view the big pro cameras from Canon and Nikon, is not proper. It's not appropriate. The A9 will change. It will evolve. We've seen it with the A9, the original A9. A9II is going to change with its own 5.0, 6.0, whatever. It'll probably be called 2.0 or 3.0 because they start at 1. But I have every confidence that there's going to be more features brought to us in the immediate future, probably before the Olympics start, where we're going to get some more added value out of the A9II. And so, you know, I remember Gitzo tripods when I was a young guy in college. They used to have a true lifetime warranty. They used to have stickers on the side of the tripods that said lifetime warranty plus reincarnations. That's what it said. It was a really cool little logo. And really and truly, the A9 and all the Sony cameras have this ability, if they have enough processing power, they can be upgraded in the future And Sony has a track record of going backwards and taking a camera like the A9 and updating it repeatedly over time. I don't know how many firmware updates there were total. I think it was 9 or 10, which included 6.0 and 5.0. But there were many before that that changed or adapted or changed its behavior. But 5.0 was revolutionary. And I think there's probably an equivalent firmware upgrade coming for the A9II. Well, I just have to wait and see what's in that upgrade. But the number 18 is probably the best future bet. I think that's the main reason. I think maybe the most important one of all the others is that this camera's not finished yet. And over time, over the next year, I think we're going to see lots of changes come to it, and that'll be exciting. Now, I wanted to be a little bit more balanced in this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to end this video in kind of a weird way with the A9II pain points. So what does the camera not do that I want it to do? What does it not have that I want it to have? And I've kind of prioritized these just like I did in the regular ones with the 18 that I think it's great. The number one thing for me that's my pet peeve is I wear eyeglasses and I shoot sports, sometimes in the rain. It's very difficult to be wearing eyeglasses all the time and be able to shoot. I cannot wear contacts because I have astigmatism, and I can't see sharp focus in a viewfinder with contact lenses. I've tried it. It does not work for me. I know it works for some, not me. So back in 1980, Nikon came out with a camera called the F3. It was the pro camera that replaced the F2. It was a tremendous camera. It was great. I used them, throughout my early career. But 3 years after they came out with the F3, they didn't make a new camera, but they made a new eye-level viewfinder. And that was called the Eyepoint viewfinder. So the F3 became the F3 HP. And Nikon did this to respond to complaints from photographers that were having difficulty seeing the entire inside of the viewfinder with glasses on. I have yet to see a camera that Sony has made that gives me the relief I need to be able to see the entire viewfinder. I really want to be able to do that. I've been asking Sony for this for a long time. I've even thought about it, because it's an EVF, they could make the EVF change its size slightly by zooming in and out, just like a TV channel. Just in the same way that you set up the custom functions on an LCD projector. I don't understand why they can't just make, or I can make that viewfinder a little bit smaller in there so that I can see the whole thing. But those of us that wear glasses, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't wear glasses, you don't care about this. I'm going to go to number 2. So number 2, huge pet peeve of mine, there's still no 250th sync. This drives me bats. Just because you can put your Godox flash on, or your Sony flash, or your Profoto flash trigger on the camera and get 250 sync does not mean I can get it when I want to plug in a set of arena strobes up in a catwalk and connect to a pocket wizard. They're different things. When you take your Profoto trigger and you put it on your hot shoe on your A9II or any other camera, and you go to 250th, you're actually in early high-speed sync already because you're a third of stop over the sync speed of the camera. Sony needs to get out of denial and realize this is a very, very important feature that we must have as sports photographers. In the United States of America, there are 4 big sports, and exactly 50% of those are using strobes, which is basketball and hockey. They're very popular sports, so the A9II is the greatest sports camera ever made for half of all the sports that we play in the United States that are super popular for revenue or whatever. They just need to, I just thought for sure that A9II would have a 250 sync, and I'm really disappointed that they didn't do it. I don't know why. I don't know why it's not a bigger priority. I don't understand it, and I'm going to keep pestering, but I'm getting pissed, and I really wish they would do this. Number 3, at some point, Sony has to respond to the needs of the community of photographers that use their cameras and give us small and medium JPEGs and small and medium raw. Small and medium raw are really, really essential. Event photographers really need this feature. I would love to be able to go and shoot medium raw large JPEG, but I can't because it's not an option. So it really bums me out. I hope that Sony will address this. Maybe it will be addressed in a future firmware update. Seems like that would be possible. So hopefully something will happen with A9II down the road and we'll get this. Number 5, a true seamless interface with the Apple platform. Now, some of my friends that are a lot smarter than me, like Greg Gibson and Paul Giroux, they tell me that some of these issues that you have with making a Sony camera work with an Apple iPhone, for instance, or an iPad or a Mac Pro, whatever, MacBook, some of them say it's the Mac OS, but man, it just got to be an easier way to interface. The bottom line is that even though you make phones, Sony, and even though you make computers, I'm an Apple user. I'm an iPhone owner since day one. I'm always going to use a Mac. It's like I'm a cold, dead hands guy. You know, I'm not going to use a PC. No one's going to make me do that. And I wish that I didn't have to keep an Airbook, an old Airbook, that's 2 versions back in OS just so that I can do firmware upgrades on my cameras and lenses. It's maddening to me that I have to do that. It drives me crazy. So I wish Sony would get out of denial. I wish they would kind of face up to the fact that most photographers are Apple people. We're visual people. Apple caters to us. I would like Sony to cater to us as well, especially with Imaging Edge, which was supposed to be a big improvement over Play Memories, but I mean, I don't use all that fancy FTP stuff, so it's just another app that doesn't work with my camera. The Wi-Fi falls off all the time at games. I have to reacquire it. I can't tell you how many times I've shot the stupid barcode in the back of my screen to get the camera to handshake again so I can just send pictures to Instagram. It drives me a little crazy, so I'm over that. And finally, this is kind of a small thing. It probably isn't worthy of being number 6, but man, I hate those strap lugs on all the cameras. If you go to Goodwill right now, anywhere in the United States, you can buy a camera, an old film camera for $5, $3 that'll have the same strap lugs that the A9II has on it. And that just drives me batty. Why would you make a perfectly silent camera that had strap lugs that will move and hiss and rattle and shake? It just drives me a little crazy. There has to be a better way to do that, and I hope you find it. So, I'm done talking. I'm sure you'll have comments, and remember, I'm just one guy. I love to shoot sports. I love to shoot sports with Sony. The Glass, the A9, the A9II, phenomenal tools that make my life so much easier. I see huge benefit to the A9II. Some of you will not. Some of you are going to find benefit in the dropping of the used price in A9s and go pick them up for $2,000 or whatever. And that's great for you. But the A9II for me is worth every stinking penny. I'm hoping to get 3 of them as soon as I can. I got to save some money though and do some jobs. But I hope this has been helpful to you. And I hope that you've enjoyed some of the pictures I've put along the way so you can see some of the images I've been taking as I've been driving around. Thanks so much for your patience, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks so much.